Alright, this is a video lesson for AQA GCSE Business Studies Unit 2 Production section. So what we're going to want to go through here are the key concepts: flow, production, efficiency, economies and diseconomies of scale, and maintaining quality as a business grows. The key vocab is listed here, and what I would suggest you do is maybe pause right about now and take some notes, and just make sure you have all these words written down so you can refer to them later and make sure that you've got good definitions for them. Right, so moving on. Flow production. First, we're going to want to review job and batch production. Job production, as you know, is making one-off items one at a time, kind of like this tailor here cutting a suit that's bespoke. And batch production is where you make all of one item at one time, store it, and then sell the different items as you go. And you should be able to review the advantages and disadvantages of that from Unit 1. Flow production takes it the next step. The definition for this is it's large-scale production where each stage of production is carried out one after the other continuously on a production line. So the best way to think about this is for something like Coca-Cola. Those bottles are just going off the production line. There's no changing them. They're one after the other, probably going 24/7. Coca-Cola's got a lot of Coke to sell, and that's the way that they produce it. The advantages of this is that obviously you can have lots of Coke being made, so that's large volumes. It allows for specialization, which we'll look at a bit later, and it also means that it's very cheap for each unit to be produced. The disadvantage is that to set up all those machines, it costs a lot of money. It lacks flexibility, which means that if you make one kind of Coca-Cola, you can't easily change it over. And obviously, well, we'll look at this a bit later, but it can lead to employee boredom and dissatisfaction. Now, another key vocab word that we have is specialization. This is where your work is divided into separate tasks or jobs that allow workers to become skilled at one of them. So look at this computer worker here. She's probably not very skilled at building a computer in general, but because she's on a production line and she probably does one component over and over again, she gets really good at that, and that actually leads to efficiency for the business. But as we said before, it could mean that there's a bit of boredom in that job. A few good examples. I've put together a playlist here. So if you click on this link, which is live on the page, it'll take you to a playlist, and I would suggest looking at a few of those videos, especially the one about cars, because that's some good example of flow production. So maybe what you might even want to do is look at the videos and see if you can identify aspects of flow, aspects of batch production, and aspects of job production. And that link is going to go away now. Okay. The next section that we're going to be looking at is efficiency, and efficiency is all about lean production. So lean production is another vocab word. It means that it's a production approach that aims to minimize the amount of waste produced by a business. So this means that they're making sure that they don't produce too much stuff. This means that they're making sure that their workers are working on task and all the time, and this means that they don't hold too much extra stock of materials because that's costly. When I think about lean production, I think about Toyota, because Toyota is the company that developed this. They're a global manufacturer of cars. They have to be really, really lean if they want to beat all the other car markets out there. Kaizen is a part of lean production. It's called continuous improvement. And what it means is that employees are encouraged to meet in small groups to discuss how things can be done even better. Even small changes can add up to improvements in the long run. And that's what you want to look at for your vocab term. Basically, what it means is that everyone in the business assumes that things can be done better, and they ask people how they can be done better. Just think about how much better off you'd be if, after every single lesson, somebody asked you, how could this lesson have gone better? If you take those small improvements, they can add up to some big things. The next thing that you're going to want to think about for efficiency is just-in-time production. What this means is that a business only makes an order when the customer is ready for it, and the business does not hold lots of extra stock of materials because this is costly. We're going to look at an example here for a typical business. Now, a typical business might have a factory and a warehouse, and in that factory they might produce something, and then they give them over to the warehouse. And in the warehouse, after they produced a few of them, these things build up and they sit there. That's what the warehouse is for. That means that when an order comes in, the order goes directly to the warehouse, and somebody in the warehouse fulfills the order, makes sure the customer gets what they want. And everyone's happy with that. The only problem, though, is that it's expensive to have such a big factory with all the extra materials to make these orders. It's expensive to have the warehouse, and in some ways, even just having all these things sitting around, that's quite expensive because, well, that represents stuff that you could have doing something else. It's an opportunity cost. So it's an expensive way of doing production, and here's what just-in-time production tries to do. With just-in-time production, you get rid of the warehouse altogether. You don't even have to have it because orders are made for the customer as they come in. And it also means that your factory can probably be a lot smaller because you don't have so many materials lying around that you have because you're not making so many orders. So when an order comes in, it goes straight to the factory produces it, and then voila, straight to the customer. It means that a lot of cost is saved. That is a much smaller pound sign that you're seeing there than the previous pound signs. So in review, just-in-time production means that you are more efficient, But obviously the disadvantage is that if anything goes wrong in the production supply chain, you will not be able to meet your customer needs. Now, this is actually quite relevant with the Fukushima disaster because so many Japanese businesses use this type of production that when they shut down all the railroads and roads in Japan, it meant that a lot of businesses couldn't get their supplies to their customers, and a lot of businesses were out of luck, so to say. Next up, we've got economies and diseconomies of scale. Economies of scale are the reasons why the unit costs fall as a business expands. And diseconomies of scale are the reasons why unit costs rise as a business expands. This is really just a fancy way of saying that you have advantages or disadvantages of being big as a business. So let's think about this for a second. Let's think about two different businesses. Oh, surprise. The Mission Burrito in Oxford, small business, versus McDonald's. So my question is, what kinds of advantages does McDonald's have that the Mission Burrito would not? Well, let's think about this. These are what we call economies of scale. So they can do things like bulk buying. If you're McDonald's, you're probably buying thousands and thousands of patties of beef steaks every single day. So that means that you can probably get a better supply price from your beef producers. The Mission Burrito only orders a few, so they get a higher price. You have technical economies if you're McDonald's. What this means is that you've got the better machines, you've got the better equipment, you can afford it because you're bigger. You've got specialist managers. The person who is a CEO of McDonald's is probably a pretty big head honcho kind of person. For the Mission, obviously, they're doing well, but they're not exactly quite as good as the ones from McDonald's, and so McDonald's can be able to attract those top managers. You have financial economies because it's going to be easier for a big business like McDonald's to get a loan. They probably also have some retained profits that a small business doesn't have. And it's also easier for them to take risks. If McDonald's has a big flop of a product, it's not going to wipe them out because they've got so many other products and so many other business and so many other small locations that they can fall back on. If you want to think about what economies of scale means, look at this guy here. He's shopping at Costco. Now he's buying a lot of nappies, looks like stuff for his maybe a young child. Now if he's buying that at Costco, he's getting a much lower unit price, but you can only get that if you buy a lot of them like he's doing there. So just think about that. What are the disadvantages of being big? Well, that's what we call diseconomies of scale. So again, think about McDonald's. If you're at McDonald's, you might have poor communication. This might lead to poor motivation from some of your employees. And it also might mean that you have poor coordination. Maybe not everybody knows what they're doing because the business is so big. And that makes me think is that, for me, I'll take Mission Burrito over McDonald's any day of the week because I just think it's that much better because the small business is better able to serve my needs. So it gets a bit of a thumbs up there. Right. Next big idea is quality. Quality means that the goods or services meet the expectations of the customers. It doesn't necessarily mean that the product's super expensive. You can even have a cheap pen be quality as long as it meets the customer's expectations. So for a cheap pen, that means that it doesn't leak all over you, and it also means that if you've got a hammer, it doesn't break when you try to pound something in. So how do you maintain quality? Now you can either check it at the end of the line, or you can do something which is called total quality management. That's called TQM, and it's a system that makes every employee in the business responsible for the quality of the product. All the way, from the top to the bottom, all the way down to the janitor, everybody's responsible for making sure that the products that go off the line are quality. This means that each person along the line has an internal customer, so if you spot something from the previous person who's given it to you and the quality is not good enough, you send it back. It saves money because people check as you go, not just at the end of the production line, which means that mistakes can be corrected before they reach the final stage of production. TQM means that you save money, as I said, because mistakes are prevented rather than found out later. But the problem is that everybody must be committed or otherwise the system breaks down. And not everybody wants to take the extra responsibility of checking each other's work. So if there's a link in the chain that's weak, the whole chain breaks. Now, one of the last big parts of this is going to be outsourcing. And the easiest way to explain outsourcing is to give a bit of an example. Let's say you've got a typical factory that's making hammers. Now, when that factory has an order come in, what they'll do is they'll do their best to make sure that they can fill the order, so they sell one of the hammers to their customers. Everybody's happy with the situation because the factory made a sale and the customer got their hammer, and that's what usually happens in a typical business. Now, let's say that this factory had a load of orders one day. Okay, so they try to fill them, but they can't. It's not a very good situation for the factory because their customers were expecting something, but they couldn't actually fill the orders, so somebody's disappointed, and they obviously want to avoid this. So the next time this factory gets a lot of big orders, maybe what they do is they outsource, which means that they find another factory that's not even part of their business, and they tell them how to make the hammers that they make. So in this case, the factory is making their hammers. They look just the same. It's just by another business, but they're sold to the customers the same way, and the customers don't even know any difference. So the customers get their hammers from both factories. Everybody's happy, and, well, the business that originally got the orders is happy because all their customers have got their needs fulfilled, and the other business is actually pretty happy because they've got some extra work coming in from this other source. So it's a good situation for everybody. The only problem is that let's say the other factory doesn't make the hammers quite right. Let's say that they break as soon as you use them. Well, your business is still responsible for the quality because remember, your customers are going to you thinking that you're fulfilling their orders. So outsourcing is, well, that's a bad situation, obviously. So outsourcing, the definition is to use another business to make all or part of the product you provide or an aspect of your customer care. This often happens through, say, manufacturing or the cleaning that you have, say, Coke School, or the financial services. You often will find another business to provide that for you. So the advantage is that it allows your business to deliver orders that would otherwise not be possible to fulfill. It means that your business can focus on more important activities rather than just all the extra everyday things. But the disadvantages is that quality may suffer, and remember, to the customer, your business is responsible for quality. They're not going to accept to say, oh, well, another business was outsourcing this. So that's basically the production in a nutshell. Remember, the key concepts are flow production, efficiency, economies and diseconomies of scale, and maintaining quality as a business grows. What I would suggest you do is you pause now, look through the key vocabulary that's there, and ask yourself, do I have a really good definition, and is it written down in your book for each one of those terms? I'd also suggest that as you're online, you do a little extra review. If you do a Google search for Tutor to You, Production Unit 2, or even BBC Bite Size, that's all really good. So, best of luck. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you back in lesson.